Hello, my name is Phil Mullen. Thank you for joining us. You are listening to In the Half-Light, a podcast by Skeen Press in association with the Museum of Literature Ireland. Today we're talking about something rarely discussed, what it was like to grow up Black and mixed race in Ireland in the 20th century. For some of us that meant growing up in foster families or being adopted, while for many others, they were incarcerated in institutions such as mother and baby homes and industrial schools. My guests and I were born into a country that, for most of that time, refused to acknowledge us. Our voices and our stories have largely been absent from conversations about these institutions and adoption stories in Ireland. In part 2, we continue with more personal stories and memories that reveal the daily realities of growing up marked as different in Ireland. The small moments, the feelings, the experiences that weren't acknowledged at the time. Our first speaker begins by outlining his search for his identity and family.
I kept trying to find out information about my background, and as most people know, you could never get the full details. You'd be just told a load of pack of lies and that your mother and father are dead and all that stuff. Eventually, I did find out a bit, only in the last 10 years, I discovered I got through DNA and we tracked down the family. And my mother did remarry and ended up in Reading. And only about 3 or 4 months in February, we discovered the grave, and I ended up visiting it. I probably sent you pictures of that. That was the first time I stood by my mother's grave since my birth, And I have 4 other people who were born about 5 years after me. I'm in touch with them in an indirect way now. At the moment, they were pretty cool, but the nieces were more progressive. I found this a problem when they do find out. Of course, it was probably a shock that I existed. This is a problem but I was forced to go through 2 DNAs. The first time I did my own DNA, that's when we discovered. But then there was something came up and I had to do a forensic DNA because someone couldn't believe this, and that came out 100%. So everything is accepted now that they didn't know and they only discovered this. But since then, another person came to me and said they knew all the time about me and that they were just told not to dig it up, So at this stage, it's a 50-50 whether I get more involved with them or not. I'm not too pushed because I was quite happy. At least I found my identity. To me, that was just as important.
That's very revealing, Jude, because my mother died about 18, 19 years ago. And after she died, I contacted her children to let them know, that I was alive and I was a sibling of theirs. And I met them all and they seemed accepting, but at the back of it, I don't think they really are. And anyway, there isn't the close bond. I have friends that I would consider much closer to me, friends that grew up in the institution that are that are family to me than what they are.
About 5 years ago, I did get a phone call and he just rang me up one Saturday morning and he said, Jude Hughes says, I'm your half-brother. And that's the first time I had a contact. We had the suspicions, but we didn't know where they were. So they had been following me all right. And he knew all about me. He said, I knew about you even more than 2 years ago. And he took the courage to ring me up. Now, he does want to break down the barriers. So do 2 nieces contacted me. And they were having fights with them about it. So it looks like things may change as it goes along. Because I have another person who has put some of them in their place. And they've apologized for what was going on. So we may have a bit more of a conciliation get-together eventually, because it's coming near the end of that at this moment, And then found a connection with the African side as well, and we're following that up as well.
Yeah, I got, when I did the DNA testing, I got some matches, but I'm not bothering about the matches or contacting people because I suppose I'm a bit more wary now after contacting my half brothers and sisters that it's really hard to make a relationship, when so many years have passed, I find anyway. And I just find myself so lucky because I've just got such good friends and good companions. And 90% of them are people I grew up with in the orphanage. And that is enough for me.
It's interesting that you keep referring to it as the orphanage when the majority of children had parents.
Oh, yeah. And I always remember, I think I remember telling you this before, that the nun in charge used to walk down the avenue and some of the more righteous people on the avenue would be saying, "Oh, sister, some of the orphans did this and some of the orphans did that and some of the orphans did the other." She used to say, "Orphans? Why are you telling me about orphans? I haven't got any orphans." Because there wasn't really many orphans.
It was an industrial school.
It was an industrial school. Most people had parents. I'll say some people, maybe their father died or the mother died and the father couldn't bring them up or whatever. But they knew, you know what I mean? They knew. I didn't know when I was a child that I had a mother and whatever. But they knew. They had all the information themselves. So she wasn't going to let the people that lived outside the convent condemn us as orphans.
Can I ask about fathers and about absent fathers? Were fathers ever mentioned?
No.
Their names didn't seem to be put on the birth certificate. And, lots of people wonder why that was done.
But that was the law at the time. You had to be married to have a father's name on the birth cert.
So what about for you? Did you ever wonder about your fathers, who you were, how come you weren't twice, or how come... at what point did you begin to notice that you were different to the other children?
I think I always knew. And I think even, now, when I look at different programs, reuniting families and whatever, I see the first thing that everybody wants is to find their mother. And I don't know why that is, but very few programs where people don't know who their mother and father is are looking to find their father first. Everybody's looking to try and find their mother first. Whether that's because they think if they find the mother, they'll get all the answers. But my outlook was, I would say from when I was about 15 or 16, I wanted to find my mother. I did find her when I was about 16 in her family home in Dublin, but she didn't live there. She was married and whatever. It just so happened it was my grandfather's funeral she was home for. And I asked her to keep in touch and she said she wouldn't keep in touch. And I remember discussing this with one of the nuns in the school. And she said to me, "Well, a lot of damage can be done." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, she's married and she has other children. And what you have to remember is those children are as innocent as you are. And if you do anything deliberately to upset the apple cart, you won't have any luck for it." Do you know what I mean? So for years, I
don't stir it up now.
Yeah, but she had a point. Because there was 4 other children, wasn't there?
It was for you too.
Oh, I know, but she felt at that time I was doing fine.
Yeah, but that again goes back to the black sheep,
Yeah.
Why are you stirring up? Why,
And at that point, did you ask your mother about your father? Or?
No, I never asked her. And I was always building up the courage to ask her, and I never asked her. And then, she passed away, and when she passed away, I was fuming that I never asked her. But I don't think I would have got the truth anyway. Do you understand what I mean?
Like you said, these long-lost father programs were always looking for the mother. I wanted to find my mother initially because I didn't even know I was mixed. I was black. Everyone looked at me as black, the black girl. I thought I was black. So I went looking for my mother. And then I realized my mother was white. And I wanted to find my father then. Because, okay, you're white like everybody else is white around me. So I need to find the black part of me. So that took me a long time to find him. It only happened 4 years ago. And that was amazing to get to. Unfortunately, he passed away a long time ago, about 30 years ago. But it was important for me to find that African side of me so I could finally tell people where I was from, or where my roots came from, or where my hair came from, because that was always the big question. Where are you from? Or where you really from?
What are the ethnic groups?
Nigerian. They're always Nigerian. But yeah, and I went to Nigeria and I met them and we had a parade and everything and they were delighted. And it was just one of those amazing moments.
They had a parade for you.
Just for me.
Kind of a homecoming.
Yeah, through the village and speeches and everything because they didn't know about me and my father didn't know about me. And that was amazing. And then I discovered I had 3 siblings because he actually married an Irish woman when he was in Dublin. And he went on to have 3 kids with his Irish wife, 3 mixed race kids. And we haven't met because they're not interested. The Nigerians have accepted me wholeheartedly, without question of a doubt. And I did a DNA test. I wanted to do a DNA test with a member of my father's family. And they said, there's no need. You're the head of them. And I was like, I'd still like to do it just to be sure, you know. And we did it. And there was a match and there was cheers all around, you know, because Africans love the more children, the better.
Yeah, I just think it's great now that there's DNA, because I just think that nothing can remain hidden now.
Yeah, but also you cannot deny who I am. This is who I am, whether you accept me or not.
What about you, Sharon? Is it a father and where you came from?
I did, but unfortunately for me, I had difficulty trying to come to terms with the fact that I was African growing up. So most of the time that was an avoided subject, but thankfully I kind of healed from that. And when I talked to my aunt, she brought me to the house that I was born in Hammersmith. And what was very amusing was that we were on the steps of the house like we owned it, you know. And then the owner came out and said, "Can I help you?" He was a black man. And we explained the situation. And it turned out that he actually bought the house from at the time that my mother had, the person who owned it, my mother was renting from. This was the same person he bought the house from. And so we were explaining that I was born there. And it was a black man that owned the house when my mother was living in. So I looked at my aunt because my mother didn't tell me. And I thought, okay. And I didn't even say anything. I just looked at her and said, no, it wasn't him. Because my father was either Jamaican or Barbados. I'm not sure where.
What did you mean when you say you had trouble coming to terms that you were African?
I had trouble coming to terms because I learned that because of the experience I had, I was always seen as an African. I was never seen as Irish. And an awful lot of the information that I received about African people were incredibly awful. I mean, you know, for me, charity organizations, they're very powerful in how they, you know, use their advertising to, you know, promote an African dependency on whiteness. And so year in, year out, we were saturated with images of African despair,
Phil, when you went to England, did anybody else go to England?
I went to England.
What kind of a place did you find there? What kind of a world did you find there? How did you fit in?
Oh, fitted right in.
Is it right in?
Yeah, because we you know, it's London. I went to London.
I was in
so it's very diverse.
Hammersmith.
So you just blended in.
Yeah.
Now, people were surprised I was Irish as well. Whenever I said I was Irish, again, you still got how could you be Irish? You don't look Irish. You don't have freckles and red hair.
Yeah, they kept asking me, was I from Liverpool?
Oh, really?
Well, the Dublin accent and the Liverpool
accent
is very similar.
But it was, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I stayed there for 5 years.
Yeah, I loved it as well, except for when you obviously had a big grow to mix with the Irish community. And I found the Irish community actually quite racist. I made great Irish friends there as well. Being in a multicultural society.
Oh, it's fabulous.
That gave me my strength and fill me up and confidence and whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as well as that, like the race laws in the UK, I'm not saying that they enact them all the time, but they're there. Do you understand what I mean? It's a different kettle of fish.
But there's more people. Here you were on your own. On your own.
Yeah, yeah.
I found that a lot of people who were born in Ireland are black. ethnicity who ended up wanting to go to England because they'd feel more at home there. The last of them did go over to England because they felt very isolated here. And even a few of them out, when I speak to them, say to me, how on earth did you stick it through out in Ireland?
You never left, Jude?
No, I nearly did one time, but that's a hilarious story. The London Transport used to advertise for bus conductors and drivers, and I did, like most people, want to fit in more with, because I felt a bit lost here then. And anyway, I answered the ad, and there was an interview in the Gresham Hotel. Then I was told to go into the next room, and there was this lady. And she says, I see you're a tailor. Mm-hmm. And why do you want to come over to me? I says, I want to fit in with more of the ethnic community because I feel lost here, And then she looked at my suit. She said, did you make that suit? I said, I did. You know what she said? There's no way you're going to be a bus driver or conductor. She says, you only want to use this till you're ready to see if you can link up with Savaro or something. She was dead right. That's exactly was my plan. Because I knew nobody in London. Mm. Yeah, there's people feeling lost and, wanted to see where they could fit in. Because you did feel lost, especially after 16, you were out in the wild world,
Jude, I remember when I was in London and I went on a date with this young Caribbean fellow, must have been West Indian, and he brought me to a blues party. And I was just like, couldn't believe it. And he said to me, what's wrong with you? I said, I'm scared. He said, why are you scared? I said, everybody's black. He said, you're black yourself.
Actually, that actually reminds me when I was in my 30s, I was about 35 and I went to America. And I had decided that I wanted to go to Harlem because I love the African-American culture. I just think it's just so vibrant and so incredibly creative. And I decided because, like yourselves, I had had enough with the Irish that were not accepting me anyway. But I decided to go from Manhattan to take the train to Harlem. And when I got on, it was familiar in the sense that all of the people there were white. But the closer I got to Harlem, I noticed that there was less and less white people. So when I actually got to Harlem, it was all black. But what happened was very shocking because all of a sudden I started to be terrified. I started to have these incredible fears just come through my body. I was actually experiencing terror. And I thought to myself, if they see the terror, they're going to rob me. They're going to beat me up. And I'm going to really, really suffer here. And I was so frozen in the seat that all I kept doing was, if I look straight out, they won't see me. And I got off the train and the fear just evaporated. Now, I'd never met the African Americans before, so where did I get the information? I have always lived in Ireland. So actually what I was learning is that I learned to be afraid of people who look like myself. Yeah. And that's, but knowing that and feeling it is a completely different way because what I felt was an extreme terror. And so if we're running from black people, then white people are running from black people. And it kind of feeds into the ideology of white superiority, and I really believe, like going back to the charity images and messages, I think they have had, because they have been going operation in this country for over 50 years, they, I believe, has had a profound influence on how we in Ireland view African people abroad, and then how we view them when they come here. It's just we never connect the dots. That much of what we have is we've learned this, we're socialized into it, and then the African person who comes doesn't know, what's going on.
Absolutely. And they also don't have that sense of victimhood that has been put onto them.
And they have a sense of community and they have a sense of knowing who they are. But then when they come to Ireland, that can go very quickly because they're seen as subhuman. Let's face it,
Can I ask you as well, in terms of And what I'm interested in is growing up. Are the small acts of defiance or resistance that brought some kind of joy into your life? Do you ever think of, was there anything that you might have done to resist the racism that you experienced?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about it last night. And honestly, there's times when I'm lying in bed and I think of things that were done to me and said to me and enacted against me. And I did nothing. And now, I'm in my 70s and I can wake up with the sweat running down my neck and the anger within me that even though I could have done nothing at the time, that I allowed it to happen.
It's because you shrunk yourself. I think.
Yeah.
Because I feel similar. Yeah, I think we try to make ourselves small. Maybe they won't see us.
And I just...
Because we stood out.
Yeah.
So we walked into a room and we stood out and everybody turned. What's that? So I think when people did things, might be your opinion, but when people did things to us, we didn't fight back because then we were creating more.
As I said, like, and especially when I went from Booterstown to Limerick. And I mean...
You want to explain that?
Well, I was sent from Booterstown to Limerick, and when I looked at the reports of why I was sent from Booterstown to Limerick, part of the report was I was black and I had a weakness for men. I was 11. 11. Anyway, I went to Limerick, and I mean, Limerick was just a hellhole, and I don't know how I ever ended in there because Limerick was a reformatory school, and I used to feel envy for the girls that were sent there from court, because if you were sent there from court for like shoplifting or any of these petty things, you got a sentence, you got 18 months or you got 2 years or you got whatever, and you knew how long you were going to be there. Whereas I never knew how long I was going to be there. And the nuns treated me so badly. And I mean, I'm not joking you, they just took the whole spirit out of me. But somehow or other, I got the spirit to run away.
When did you? From Limerick?
Well, they had me isolated for months and months on end. I never seen nobody, only the nuns. And
Did you go to school?
No, I didn't go to school. I did go to school when I was first there. But once I got past the primary, they didn't send me out to school because I was black and I would have been a disturbance on the other children if I went out to school, even though they said I was intelligent and I would well cope and whatever. No, it had me in isolation. She said I was the ringleader for everything. And it was Good Friday, and I had been in isolation, I think, for about 2 months. And she put me in to scrub this room, bigger than this room. And it was to be sparkling when she come back. And I don't know what got into my head, but the minute she was gone, I just opened up the window, climbed out the window and ran away. And I hitched from Limerick to Dublin, and I was only 13 or 14. And I remember one stage I got, the first lift I got was from Limerick to Roscrea. And he said, when you got to Roscrea, he said, would you like an ice cream? I said, I'd love one. And he went to get an ice cream, and he was gone more than 10 minutes. And I said, there's something up. I jumped out of this car and ran and hitched another lift. Anyway, I got back. The nuns could see in Booterstown I was at the end of my tether. I was suicidal. Like when I was in Limerick, they were so racist. I used to think these nuns are out in the missions. What way are they treating the black people out there? One day I was scrubbing pots in the kitchen. And like some of the nuns were nice, but a lot of them weren't. And the nun that was running the kitchen was really nice. And she was saying, now you've washed up the pots and you've done this and you've done a good job. And the nun in charge came in and she said, now you've given me a great worker today. She's after doing all, cleaning up and whatever. And she turned around and she said, well, I hope you know, she said, that some of the nuns wouldn't even eat their dinner if they knew that a black pig like her was washing their pots. But I tell you something, I was glad to escape from there.
Good for you.
Because if I just stayed there and they had have decided what my next move in life was going to be, it wouldn't have been to my advantage.
No, gosh.
What about you? Any resistance to...
No, I just shrunk, really. And you freeze as well. Even only the other day, someone said something and I froze. You just freeze. We were speaking about it earlier. I started a new job and this elderly man came to the window and said, oh, you have a new girl. My boss was standing behind me and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, "You're obviously not from here, so welcome," he said. "Welcome to the country." And I was stunned. My boss was stunned. My colleague was stunned because, you know what I mean? What are you on about? You know? But afterwards, of course, I should have said this and I should have said that. And why, but I'm just, even today, I'm shocked, stunned, silenced sometimes at the stuff people come out with. So no, I didn't have any retaliation as a child. I just kind of shrunk and I suppose took it and kept it because I didn't want to create more trouble, draw attention to myself. One of the nuns one day made me put books on my head, like in Africa, how they carry water on their head. Yeah. Look what Ona can do. Because, of course, we have an afro, you can flatten it down. So I walked around with books on my head sometime, just to show because I was from Africa. This all leaves scars.
In the school, the community school that I was in, there were boys and some of them were a bit rough, and I used to retaliate with rocks, I would just throw them at them, But outside of that, no. Like you, I was very, very shy when I was young. Really, I was exceptionally shy. And so no, if anybody called me names, I used to be just so humiliated. I used to be so embarrassed. Imagine.
What about you, Jude? How was it like within the Christian Brothers for boys? And
Yes.
did you ever push back?
Well, they pick on you, so you learn to stand on your own 2 feet and of course these ignorant remarks. But I also began to read a lot and trying to understand. And that old book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, I remember reading that, and that kind of woke me to it. There is people who think they can treat people like this, and you'd wonder when you hear about what's going on in America. And so, is that what could happen to you if you don't make a stand? So it kind of made me very aware that even though they'll be all nice to you, you knew behind it might be as false as anything. So you learned, stand on your feet and don't let anybody, treat you. You stand, don't take it from them. And kind of broke, made strong. And then I got into the anti-apartheid was the start of that. And the rest is, then the other things came on after. But it kind of developed in very natural. I don't know how it come that I took that way. But I was also part of activities I even joined a band after I left the school, played basketball after I left the school. I integrated very well, but I also loved, I didn't have much contact with black people, but I used to love some of the students in Dublin. When they'd see you, they'd say to you, "Hello, brother," It was lovely to hear someone say that to you. And they'd stop me and talk. And that's where I got the connection with Africans, even pre any organisation, because we chat and think, and because they were curious about me, and they tell me where they're from, and slowly they got invited to events and things like that. And that's how I got connected with the African communities that were in. There was the Overseas Students Club that someone invited me to, and I got to meet people from there, and it was great that way. So this was way in advance of any of the organisations before Harmony, even during the anti-apartheid. I got to know some of these people through that.
Thinking Aloud, Thinking Together is a new conversation series from Skeen in partnership with the Museum of Literature Ireland, amplifying voices that have been silenced in Irish cultural life. It brings together artists, writers and thinkers whose work offers a radical new perspective on existing narratives. Thinking Aloud, Thinking Together provides a space to discuss points of connection and concern in contemporary culture. These conversations explore topics that are seldom spoken of in mainstream public discourse in Ireland, such as identity, relationships, shame, exclusion, and reversing the impact of erasure from history and culture. It offers a space for us to reconsider our relationship with one another, to reimagine the ways in which we live, and to rewrite the legacies we leave behind. Supported by the Rowan Trust and the Arts Council of Ireland. Produced by Ian Mullaney. Music by Oisín Mulch Pilo. For more information, visit skeenpress.com.